Hello and welcome everybody to the third lesson, the lesson on Google Search Console for more organic search traffic. So there are only a couple people on the line so far and they are coming in, so I'm going to sort of drag out the intro a little bit so that by the time we get to the content there'll be more people on the line. So bear with me if this thing is kind of slow to start. I'm going to move the microphone away from my mouth here. And if you guys can hear loud and clear, use the chat window and just give me a Y or an N to indicate if you can hear me loud and clear. And while we do the webinar today, at any point in time, if you have a question, please use the chat window. I have my colleague Chrissy to my left. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to field all of your questions. So please hang out till the end. All right, let's do this. It keeps changing the view on me, so bear with me 1 second. All right, here we go. For today is to cover how I'm using Google Search Console with a focus on one section in Google Search Console, specifically the data that exists in the search analytics. So Google Search Console is the new name for Google Webmaster Tools, and in this tool suite there are a lot of just great tools to show you how Google is interacting with your website for not only organic search traffic to get more of it, but to see where you might have any errors or to see how your site is displaying in the Google search result pages. So we're going to cover mostly search analytics as well as the crawl section, and along the way I'm going to give you a demonstration where I'm going to hop out to Google Search Console in the search analytics and give you a live example for how I would use this to identify proper keywords for a particular page and how the audience is finding that particular page. So stick with us. We'll have a section for questions at the end. And if you have any questions along the way, like I said, Chrissy's here to the left. She's fielding any sort of questions. Please use the question or chat window to let us know if you have anything while we go. So a quick recap, super quick recap from lessons 1 and 2, and a large thank you for anyone that's been with us over the last 2 months. So if I had to sum everything up from the first webinar into one sentence to kind of get you on the same wavelength that we were, it's to win at SEO, you have to focus on your user and the outcome that you want them to take on any one of your given pages. So think to yourself, what is the action I want this person to take? That's what you really should be optimizing for in 2016. And if that one bullet note has your interest in the first webinar, check out that YouTube link at the bottom of the slide. That will show you the recording of the first webinar and the same with the second. And the second bullet note is if you build it, they'll come to your website. But if you build it slow, in 2016, we just want things to be extremely quick and perfect from our mobile phones. We're no longer researching things for hours on end only on our computer. So you have to make your website fast. Google has some neat tools which help you along the way to make your website fast, and we also had a lesson about that last month. So After the webinar, we will syndicate the slides as well as the slide deck from our last webinar because I think we missed sending that out. And in the slide deck, you'll be able to click on any of these shortened links that we're sharing in our slides. Here are a couple bullet points on why you should use Google Search Console. If you haven't already claimed your site on google.com/webmasters, please do so. What Google Search Console is going to help you do is see exactly how Google is interacting with your site. If it has any issues with errors or any giant red flags, if you're getting flagged for spam, things like that, Google has this interface that will tell you exactly all of these things. So you'll be able to monitor your site performance, and I think the neatest part about that, in SEO right now, you really don't have a lot of clarity on keywords thanks to Google Analytics and Google with the security layer of no longer sending keyword data. You might have heard about this as it's getting sent now as not provided. Well, in Google Search Console, they show you the top 1,000 queries per day that someone is typing to land on your website. So it's I would say even most of that data is apparent for you. And today we're going to talk about how we can leverage that data. But there are also some other reasons you might want to use Google Search Console. You could see, is your mobile site performing better than your desktop site, vice versa, compare them. You can maintain your site just from any sort of error. You could see, did Google crawl your site more often last week than it is this week? Things like that. So if you haven't already signed up, I would encourage you to go over to google.com. This is free, by the way, google.com/webmasters. Click Add a Property and verify your domain. Now, Google has you verify your domain for a really important reason. You can't, or you shouldn't, see someone else's data if you simply say, hey, I'm the owner of this site. No, they force you to prove that. So there is a very short verification process, and without going too in depth on what that is, so we could get to the content that's we said we would in the search analytics. I can't really go too in depth on how you verify your site, but I will say most of our audience today are using Google Analytics, so it would be an easy method to verify your site if, when you are on these screens, to simply click alternate methods and then select, yes, I do already have Google Analytics. And in Google's eyes, that should be good enough to verify your site. So if you do have Google Analytics and your pixel is up to date, that should be good enough that you are able to click verify and move on without any sort of trouble. So as I said, the main content that I'm hoping we can dive into and have enough time to take away today is going to be in the search traffic portion of Google Webmaster Tools. Sorry, I'm dated in the name that I said. It's now called Search Console. I'll probably wind up making that mistake several times in the webinar, so please think of those as being synonymous. But every time I say Webmaster, it is just the old name for this. Bing, they still call it Webmaster Tools, but Google has rebranded it as Google Search Console. But anyway, this is an expanded view out of all of the tools that exist inside Google Search Console, but the two with the green blocks around them are the ones that I really focus on in this slide deck today. So just highlighting and giving you more context on those two. Search traffic it's where you really can dive in and take that second step to say, okay, we have this landing page. We're A/B testing to try and find the best language. It seems like when we phrase a title tag and we phrase the content as this over that, we get a better click-through rate. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do today, as well as other tools in that section we're going to dive into. And then the crawl section, I would say we'll focus on it just to give you an overview of what each section can do. And then the others we might need to save for another webinar. So here is the fun part where I'm going to jump out, and bear with me a second while I change screens to go live time to Google Search Console. All right. So for the sake of the example today, we are using a relatively small site. They are our client, but you'll see quickly that they are not an e-commerce site. So we help a dermatologist in Clarkston, Michigan. Their brand name is, of course, Clarkston Dermatology. So while I don't have tons of data to show you today, I do want to walk you through a decent example. And they were nice enough to give us their data to be able to show in the webinar. So as a plug to them, if you are anywhere near Clarkston, Michigan, and you're calling, they're a great dermatology center. And if you're looking for somewhere to go or need to name drop a good one, they are close to the Pepperjam heart. So if you're listening, Clarkston Dermatology, thanks for the data today. But this is Google Search Console, and what we're going to talk about today is right here under search traffic. It is search analytics. So the first thing that I'd like to explain are these 4 metrics that are stretched across the top. And it's clicks, impressions, click-through rate, and position. It's really average position. So as this line graph is charted out to the last 90 days, by default, Google Search Console will not give you data past 90 days. So I have it selected right now to show us 90 days worth of what's selected here, which is clicks. Think of clicks like traffic to your actual website. Next, we have impressions. Impressions are how many times an organic listing from your domain showed up on a Google search result page. Now, you could see when I selected impressions and clicks at the same time, it started to get a little confusing over this line graph. Like, you can hover over and see where impressions spike. Impressions are the red, by the way. So right here I could see, wow, I only got 34 clicks, but I had an opportunity to have gotten 1,053. So chances are on this particular day, my click-through rate wasn't that great, or maybe my listings were just below the fold. I'm not sure. There are also other KPIs that we could look at. One is the click-through rate. As you can see, if we add all 4 of these things on at the same time, it tends to get a little confusing. That's a really colorful chart that's hard to digest. So every time I come in here, I think to myself, why am I making this gigantic? I keep expanding the screen so you guys can see better. But I think to myself, what am I optimizing for as I do this? And more often than not, it's not going to be impressions. It's always great to get more eyeballs onto your pages. But the way I see it is, regardless of where you're ranking, if no one's clicking on your listing, you're not getting that traffic anyway. So when I look at this, I really just like to look at click-through rate and clicks with the goal of improving my click-through rate. So as I stress this one KPI, it would be when you're in here, your sacred cow is going to be that click-through rate. If you'd like to think like I think, stare at that click-through rate for a second. Understand which queries or keywords, in other words, are giving you your highest click-through rate. And as I scroll through this thing, you can see for Clarkston Dermatology, it's the doctor's name and their brand name. So as I show you how to use this tool suite, keep that in mind. For the example today, their branded term is Clarkston Dermatology. So I am looking at clicks, click-through rate, and right now all that I'm doing is just broadly gaining an understanding of what's bringing in traffic to this site. I'm going to switch it up though. So you have clicks, impressions, click-through rate, and positions, and you could look at any combination or single KPI at any given time. But with these filters, what's interesting is it only lets you, trying to make the screen a little smaller for you, it only lets you look at one of these things at a time. So right now the radio button is on queries. But the part that I'm going to show you is I can look at queries down here, or I could look at pages. And I'm able to use any filter without changing any of the dimensions in which I'm looking. So right now at this view, I am not drilled into any one search query. But I'm able to look and see, okay, these are the top pages overall. This is my average click-through rate. I'm able to see that this particular site, on average, should be earning a click-through rate of at least 3%. So you can probably guess what the first thing we're going to do is. We're going to draw our eyes to this category here, this column, which is click-through rate, and we're going to look for which pages over the last 90 days are earning a click-through rate that's less than 3.2, because those are pages we should probably consider changing up the title tag. So I found one here that's earning 1.79. It's their Cool Sculpting page. Cool Sculpting is a type of cryotherapy if you're not familiar with it, and it's one of this website's best pages. But the crazy part is it's earning a relatively low click-through rate for the overall traffic that the site gets. So what you would do is you would drill into the page, and now that the filter has automatically acquired that data, it's as if I typed in that landing page, I'm able to switch back with this filter on and see, okay, if it's earning an average of 1.7 click-through rate, and the site overall should be earning closer to 3, maybe this isn't the best phrasing, so I'd consider another one. So it looks like the phrasing that's earning the most number of clicks is Cool Sculpting Michigan. Now, I'm left to believe a search query like that is very locale specific, so I'm kind of taking it with a grain of salt, because the title tag based on the brand always says Clarkston Dermatology, but at the moment the title tag for this page really does flat out say this exact match of Cool Sculpting in Michigan, Pipe, Clarkston Dermatology. And that's only earning on 1.7. So this is a good candidate to maybe do some keyword research or find another way to say this, or figure out how we should optimize this particular page to earn more of these search queries. What I really mean is earn more traffic from these search queries. And if we stare at that for a second, you're probably going to think to yourself, well, we could spend all day doing that. We can make a page that talks about how much Cool Sculpting costs, and I would say, yes, that's actually a great idea. Or you could holistically add in everything you need in order for that page to be the best result. So I'm going to take this out a little bit, and we're going to reset the filters. We're going to go back to pages here. And right now, I'm going to show you something cool that we wind up doing. And that's a little added of a bonus. I have an Excel template that I'm going to share with all of you. And what it does is it lets us do this. It lets us go in and say, okay, what are our best pages? But then I'd like you to filter for it and only show me what are the best desktop pages. So I don't know if you're able to follow along with what I did there. Even though we are only looking at pages, we were able to filter for desktop under devices, just as you're able to change any of the other filters to say if you wanted to look at video or image results. Right now we're just looking at results from the website. But what we do is we wind up downloading all of our desktop data. So I'd click download. It really doesn't matter how you export it, and that'll wind up downloading for me. And then what we do is we wind up going back, and we do the same thing for mobile. And I should let you know, regardless of what you have charted out on the line graph here, when you download these things, I got to switch my view here, so bear with me a second if the screen's a little slower. You should be seeing, yep, you see it now. Okay, so whenever you export this, regardless of what data you have charted out in the line graph, it's going to give you all of the data for what you have filtered. So for the case of, in this case, we exported all of our landing page data filtered to only desktop results. So now I'm able to show you what we do with that. All right, so I have this template that I built where basically I'm going to show you how to use it so that when we send it in a follow-up email, you'll be able to use it on your own. Once you export all your desktop results, all you would have to do is just copy that data. So I'm hitting Control-C, and then go into my template, and then just paste it. And then once you export your mobile results, we're going to do the same thing. And I'm going to show you in a second why we're doing this. Go over to the mobile here, mobile tab, paste it, and then here's what I'm doing. I'm going to wind up giving you this template. I'm just waiting for the screen to change for you guys. Okay, so the worksheets at the bottom, if you follow along, I pasted all of my landing page data filtered for only desktop, and then I pasted all of my data filtered for only mobile landing pages. Now I should say the caveat is if you are a webmaster for someone or your own website where you have different landing pages for mobile, like an M.dot site, don't even bother with my template because it's not going to give you decent data. But what we're doing here is once you paste that in, it compares your desktop landing pages versus your mobile landing pages and all of this colorful data from J over. So I could see for Clarkston Dermatology, their website, they're earning more clicks on their homepage from desktop than they are mobile. I have tabs down here to show you really what we're doing. So as a thank you for hanging out in the webinar, we are going to give you this template, but I wanted you to see exactly what I'm doing with Search Console data. I wind up building templates like this so I don't have to do math constantly. Because in Google Search Console, while you get the data, what Google is really saying is what you do and what you do with it is really up to you. And if you're like me, you want to slice and dice data, I find that this is an easy way to do it. And I wind up making templates for things like this constantly, where these first two tabs at the bottom I just paste in, and then the following worksheet tabs do all the math. And that's really where I do my analysis. So I'm able to say, if my click-through rate should be somewhere around 3, you know, why are these pages earning a click-through rate of 0.5? This is probably a bad example. I don't really need my Contact Us page to be one of the best search results for many non-branded queries, but it's still enough to get your attention. Now, I might want to check out my events page, and I feel like you get the idea at that point. There is one other worksheet tab in here to aggregate all of the exported data to show you the averages, and that's the very last tab. So keep an eye out for this. We're going to give you a copy of the template after the webinar, but I am going to jump back into it right now and keep moving. So once again, we're going to have questions at the end. All right. So what we can do is skip over these slides. The main takeaways were search analytics will really give you the visibility you need so that on a page-by-page basis, you can see search query and their pairing to a landing page or vice versa to know what exactly your audience is searching to land on a page. Next, I wanted to really hone in and show you that regardless of how you aggregate the data, you can still use the filters. So only desktop, only video results, you're able to do it. Next, the part that I'm really trying to stress is monitor your click-through rate. As Google goes the way of machine learning, ultimately they're relying on their audience to tell them what the best search results are. If you think about that for a second, this is the metric to keep your finger on the pulse. If their audience is clicking through and landing on your website more often, that is a job well done for your SEO hat. So focus on your click-through rate. I do have a couple of slides in here to help you see what to look for, but again, focus on that click-through rate. Any pages you have that are below average, work towards getting them above average. And ultimately, here's what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out, based on a landing page, how you should rephrase your title tag and description so that you earn the click. So I switched over to Reef's data at the moment, and this is, Reef is a sandals company, and this is for their women's sandals page, and I'm showing you the existing title tag, how it's rather long. And I'm showing you a better example for a title tag based on that average click-through rate, that on this particular page for women's flip-flops, it seems like they would like a shorter one. And most likely that's because there's more mobile than desktop traffic. So if you remember from our first webinar, desktop you could get away with somewhere between 56 to 60 characters long in your title tag, but you need to think what's best for your audience with that. On a mobile device, at the moment, Google is only displaying somewhere around 40 pixels. So if you can say it and optimize for the click in a title tag closer to 40 characters, that's really what you're aiming to do. All right, so I feel like I spent a lot of time on the search analytics portion of Webmaster Tools, but that is really the part in the section of Webmaster Tools which if you've never spent time in there. My goal for today was for you to actually see, okay, this isn't so confusing, this isn't so bad, there's some great insight in here. And my goal for you and your takeaway for today is please at least spend 5 minutes and stare at your data. Take a look at that. All right, next for the rest of the webinar, I'm going to quickly breeze through and talk about what are some of the other important sections of Webmaster Tools. Please know I'm not going to go in as much detail at any section here. And like I said before, if you have any questions along the way, shoot them over in the chat window because we're going to breeze through and then we're going to get to your questions. So one of the things that Google is doing is it still counts links as votes in 2016. Christy's looking at me. Yeah, so links are still an important to Google. It used to be part of the old PageRank algorithm, and at some capacity, links are still important. Please know it's a quality over quantity game, so please don't go spamming the web with comments trying to get more links. That's not what's working these days in SEO, but links are still important, and in Google Search Console they do a pretty good job at showing you not every last link that Google knows for your website, but they show you the best and the worst of your backlinks. Now that's coming from reps at Google. I don't know how true that is, because I guess I can't really wrap my head around, okay, well, if you're not going to show me everything, how can I be sure you're showing me the best and the worst? But they do that so that if there's ever an issue or any bad linking neighborhoods that you need to be aware of so that you could disassociate or disavow that site to your site, you're able to do so. This is the section where you would see that data. I personally don't think that this is the most important section that you should spend time in Webmaster Tools, but it's at least worth taking a look at to see if you have many sites linking to you that are maybe from an irrelevant niche. So if you sell flip-flops and then have tons of, I guess, an exterminator or something, maybe a little more malicious, this is the section where you could be aware of that. So it's under search traffic, links to your site. Next is a pretty important section. It shows Google's understanding for your internal linking structure. And what I think is most important about these counts is it's showing you Google's view at what, based on link numbers, should the most important pages be. So for the example of this site, they have Contact Us linked to more than their men's apparel page. So as you look at this, just keep that in mind. And as you work with your web developers, hey, I noticed we're linking to our Contact Us page nearly 2,000 times more than our best page. I understand the importance of that, but we are spreading our page rank around 2,000 extra times across each and every page. So it's just something also to take a look at and keep in the back of your mind, because you might want to promote other pages a little more than you promote that one. This section is something you should take a look at, but this really pertains more so for anyone doing something malicious on the web. So Google Webmaster Tools is Google's interface to interact with you if you are doing anything spammy. So if they identify unnatural linking, this is where they let you know about that, and this is also the section where you plead your case, admit you didn't know, and try and get your ranking demotion removed from the Google team. The next section is international targeting, and this does what you think international targeting section would do. But the thing that I would want to inform you about international targeting is actually kind of neat. So if you set up Google Search Console, more than likely you set it up on only one or two sites. But the thing that I want to let you know is you can add up to 1,000 different properties. That's subdomains as well as subdirectories. So if you have example.com/US and that subdirectory of /US, you only want to target to the United States, well then you would want to set up a Google Webmaster Tools account specific to example.com/US and use this section to identify that that part of the site and everything after it is honing in on the United States audience. Please know that this is a clue to Google and not necessarily treated as gospel. But if you're having a little bit of a hard time trying to target a foreign audience, I would recommend you give this a shot. So I gave you an example of that too. For example, /DE if you're trying to target a German audience. The next section is important here in 2016 because everyone is using a mobile device. So if you've ever used Google's mobile friendly tool, there's actually a section in Google Search Console that gives you a little more context as to the number of pages that are having each and every issue. So you can spend time in here, figure out if any of your text targets that people would need to click on are a little too small, as well as any pages where maybe you didn't set the viewport correctly and your responsive site is a little off. So this is the section where you would see that. and more than likely you would need to work with your developer to fix some of these things. Next, we're going to breeze through the crawl section, so please and thank you for sticking with me so far. The errors section, I would say, is the most important section under the crawl part of Google Search Console, and there are really 4 main error types that you should keep tabs on. So in the screenshot to the right, you can see at the top, I'm in this screenshot already navigated into the not found errors. For this particular site, there were 135 on the desktop crawl. Towards the top, you're able to drill in smartphone errors as well as feature phone, but on this particular one, we're on desktop. So what these things are server errors. That category is where Google couldn't access the URL. It could be an issue where it timed out, or if your server was busy. This is going to show you that. So that's important because of a crawl budget sort of standpoint. If Google is only going to crawl X number of pages and only going to give you something like 5 seconds per week to do that, you don't want to bog Google down with errors or any sort of obstacle that it would have to hop through. The goal is to get more of your site to rank better. So next is soft 404, and a soft 404, I should probably explain what the category below it is first. A 404 is what we're looking at here. It's a page that's just not found. We've all seen it as we navigate the web, those oops, 404 and not found page. You love them, so do I. But users bounce when they see this thing, as well as thinking about your crawl budget. Google, if they're only going to crawl X number of pages per day, make sure that those are live pages. Now, I'd say 404s aren't the most important thing that you should spend your time on, but I will say 404s that have a lot of backlinks. So if you think about your backlinking portfolio, if they're all pointed towards a broken page, that's a lost off-site SEO opportunity. So figure out how you could get that data. If you can download a list of your links and crawl their destinations to see that they're all not a 404, that they're a live 200 page, that's a good thing, and redirect any of those broken pages. And now that we've explained what a 404 is, I can explain what a soft 404 is. So a 404 is a status code that the server gets, because the server gets the data first before you see it on the screen. But a soft 404 says, hey, this page really isn't here, but I'm getting the code as if it is. So it's kind of like Google uses the example of it's calling a page that's live that should be a broken page. They use the example of it'd be like a giraffe wearing a name tag that says it's a dog. So it's a live page, but it really should be a 404. That's Google's metaphor, not mine. Next is access denied. It's just Google can't get to the page. It's either blocked in your robots file restrictions, or it's just access denied. So these are some errors you want to keep an eye on in the crawl section. I would say this is the most important section of the crawl part of Google Search Console. This section is the crawl stats section. You'll see 3 graphs. It looks the same for every website that you'll load into Google Search Console. And my key takeaway is when I look at this thing, I want Google to crawl more pages per day and take less time to do it. So you could see the blue is pages crawled per day. I'd like that to be high, particularly with unique content, and I'd like Google to take less time to do it. So these graphs all looking kind of flat and the bottom one shooting up towards the tail end would probably gain my attention to want to get more data about why that site seems to be downloading pages slower. The next section is another important one. If you find that you're working on a new page or would like to see exactly as Google sees your page, to see if you're blocking anything in particular, or you just want to submit a page to the index, check out the Fetch as Google section. I think it's good if you change anything on a particular page to hop in here and do a fetch and render, and that is a good way to get Google to see your changes. Next is the Robots.txt testing tool. If you're wondering what a Robots.txt file is, it is the set of instructions that a crawler, such as Google or Bing, how they index the web, they first send a crawler. It's the set of instructions that they need to follow on your domain. So you specify in a text file, don't go here, it's okay to go here, or it's okay to go everywhere. But there is a tool in Google Search Console that lets you check any particular page against what your own instructions are. Because if there's a page that you need Google to get access to that you yourself have blocked, this will identify that for you. Next is, how is your sitemap.xml doing? It's metrics based on that. So a sitemap is an XML file which is a roadmap for all of the pages that Google or Bing should find on your website. This is also just a clue. Hey Google, hey Bing, you'll find these pages on my website. And I would say submit it, have it in here, but more importantly, rather than obsess over the data inside Google Search Console, work with your developer to make sure that your sitemap.xml is as perfect as possible. And I'll define what I mean by that. I mean all of the landing pages that exist in your sitemap, they need to be a live 200 status code. So if you've redirected pages and you have those still in your sitemap, or if you have broken pages in your sitemap, you are quickly going to lose trust with Google and Bing. So work closer with developers. This is a gigantic hit to everybody on the phone call today. Work with your developers to make sure that there's some sort of checks and balances in place that any landing page in your sitemap at any given moment are all a live 200 page, because you will be doing search engines a favor. The other section is another clue to Google. If you have a large section of your site that maybe contains a color code or a tracking parameter in the URL, here's where you could tell Google not to go to those URLs. And you could fine-tune exactly how you want Google to interact with those URL parameters. It's only a clue, but there are a couple warnings that will turn up if you are going to omit a large section of your overall crawl. I would say the idea here is to have Google spend more time, like I said, on unique pages rather than bogging down your crawl budget, or in other words, the allotment of time that Google has to process your website with duplicated pages. So those were the two sections that we were going to speak about today, and the only other section of Google Search Console that I wanted to give you like a one screenshot overview of is the search appearance section. So in search appearance, this is where you'll see, how do I get more rich snippets? What can I do in the SERP so that I can get more eyeballs, higher click-through rate? What are those extra bells and whistles that I can do? That really is the section where you can fine-tune that on how you appear in search results. And I would say, if I was going to call out one of the most important sections in that, it would be HTML improvements. And in there, you see what you see here on the right screenshot. It's showing you duplicate meta descriptions that Google is identifying when it crawls your website. The thing about this is it'll show you opportunities where you can optimize your meta titles, your meta descriptions a little better so that you don't have two that are the same. It'll also identify any canonical tag issues that you might have. Now, we've made it through. I've talked a lot. I went in a lot of depth with search analytics, but that was really my goal for today. So if you have any questions, we are going to get to them now. Please hang tight for a few minutes. And while we're looking at questions, we are doing another webinar on August the 16th. Please join us. It's at this bit.ly link below. And this will be in the follow-up email as well. But if you can copy this down and opt in now, that would be excellent. Okay, questions are just starting to come in now. Okay, yes, there will be a copy of the webinar. This time you have my word. We'll make sure it gets out to you. I'm sorry about that last time. And thank you for anyone that has joined us again. All right, Mike's asked a pretty good question here. He writes, if you had to make a single change to either a title tag or its corresponding meta description, and if the goal is to improve the click-through rate immediately, which would it be? Would it be the title tag or the meta description? Mike, you know, I'd say this. I would say there's a lot of controversy right now in the SEO industry on if the meta description even, and I should say the title tag too now is popping up more, do these things even matter as ranking signals? And I would argue that the goal of the title tag and the meta description is really to earn that click, to earn the right for when that person searched for that particular phrase, to earn the right to wind up on your website. So I would say I really wouldn't focus on tweaking one or the other, but rather seeing if you have your messaging right. So I would say both. And I hope that's not a terrible answer for your question, but experiment. These things are relatively quick. If you tweak your title, tweak your meta description, Webmaster Tools, sorry, I did it again. Google Search Console has a 2-day or so lag. So from the time you change it, just keep that in mind. It's going to take 2 days or so before you see that data. Hop back in there. Check it out. See, are you noticing for that particular page an average increase in click-through rate? If you are, stick with the version you have. If not, go back and make a title and description closer to the way you had it before. But to answer your question, I would say play around with both, but the goal is to get someone to be intrigued that your website has exactly what they're looking for. So I'm getting some props in the question section. So I wanted to say thanks for everyone and the kind words they're saying. Does anyone have any question at all? We do still have some time on the line. We're going to give it another 3 or 4 minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up. So far, Mike's question was the only question that I could see. If you did ask a question and I didn't answer it yet, if you would please type it in again, as it might have gotten lost in the fray. While we're waiting, I guess I could give Mike a little more context on title or description. So yeah, I would tweak both of them, the title and the description, try and earn the click. And then in this overview, we talked about that section, Fetch as Google. I would say after you tweak your title description, maybe you tweak up some of the content on the page itself, hop into that section and fetch and render as desktop, and then do it once again as smartphone, just to make sure that Google gets to the page, make sure everything's working well. Okay, it looks like someone's asking how do we get to Google Search Console and how do we get our site data to be populated inside of there. So it is still the old URL. They didn't update it yet. It's google.com/webmaster, and you could Google, I'm getting tongue-tied here, so you have to excuse me. You could Google search this. It's a Google property. It'll come up as the first result. But the way you get your site added to this is there's a giant red button at the top that says Add Property, and you simply add your domain, and it'll walk you through a couple of steps from there on how to verify it. There's just a verification process, and the easiest one I would say is if you have Google Analytics, simply click Alternate Methods, and there's a drop down for Google Analytics, and then it's as simple as clicking the Verify button. All right, guys, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today and as well on our previous 2 webinars. We're going to send the slide deck around, that template I showed you before, as well as recordings from our past webinars. If you haven't done so already, please sign up right now. Do it now. Over for our next webinar, we're going to talk about some of the tools, the other tools that I like to use to optimize websites. So that's on August 16th. Join us at that. Thanks, everyone. Take care.